Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Shut the F Up. We're Not Afraid. And I'm here with my co-host, Allison. Hi, Allison.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. So it's going to be a
Now,
fun episode. Episode
now,
one.
episode 1, we're going to tell everybody who we are so that people know
Yeah.
us. So, ladies before gentlemen, or
All right.
sheep shaggers before kangaroos.
Wow. We're starting early. We're starting early. All right, everyone. I happen to be Allison DeFranco. That's my name or one of my names.
One
Guys,
of the
that's
aliases.
my names. I kind of got I'm a big Eminem fan. We'll start there. And I do like the fact that I'm also, a lot of you may know me as Allison Disability Rights, the justice symbol on TikTok, and all is on access. So I've got my three things going on. I have about 20 years of experience as a human rights lawyer, working on disability rights here in the US and around the world. And my professional experience was very much inspired by my own personal story when at age 14, I was diagnosed with a rare retinal eye condition called Stargardt's. And just going through the loss of my central vision, so I have no central vision. If it looks at all like I'm looking at the screen now, then A plus to me. Um, and going through that when I was in high school, how teenagers are just not very nice to begin with, and when you're losing your vision, they just suck. To be honest, they need to shut the F up. Um, and also just with teachers and education and just the battles at the time, I was so scared to advocate for myself. My mom had to go in and kind of tell teachers also to shut the F up. I mean, all of that kind of once it took me years really to even start talking about it. I hid, I masked, but eventually it's why I went to law school. I took pain, I turned it into what I call passion, purpose, and now we're here talking power. So
The
that's
three
the short
P's.
of it. The three P's that led to the power P. So that's the short of it. And I should say, just so everyone knows, that when I was in college, I studied abroad in the best country in the world, New Zealand. So I have also spent a little bit of time in that other decent country, Australia. But that's apparently why I get called things like sheep, whatever he's calling me.
Well, thank you for the brief overview of your talents, including the second best country in the world, New Zealand. Appreciate that.
Are
Uh,
we?
Myself, I was born in the greatest country in the world, Australia, and then migrated to the United States in 2001, and then back to Australia in 2010, and back to America in 2023. So I've played, 6-7 with Australia and New Zealand. I didn't do the hand signals. There you go, 6-7.
Can you do that? Yeah,
Yeah,
you're doing that while I'm like looking at a globe to be
right.
like, oh yeah, I guess they do put Australia. Apparently, it's a big country,
It's actually the
a
biggest.
continent.
It's actually the biggest continent in the world, but biggest island in the world. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Let's go with that. But my history is really in business. So I was and sport. So I played goalball for Australia and also represented Australia in blind tennis, and played goalball for Australia for 15 years, and then was able to coach the Australian women's youth team that won the World Cup in 2017 in Budapest.
I
Uh,
was gonna say that's awesome.
I know it's
You're that on it.
my future prediction.
Okay. 2017 then in
2017
Budapest.
in
That's cool.
Budapest. And then I coached the Australian men's team as well. And then I was the president of Goalball Australia. And then I was the CEO of Disability Sports Australia. So at a business level and at a sports level, I've been a player, a coach, an administrator at the highest level. Worked with the Australian government across a whole range of uh, equal opportunity sporting and active and adaptive recreation policies. And I also was invited to be the guest speaker for the UNICEF Disability Kids conference in Iran, in Tehran, Iran, in 2019. And so I've done a lot of work within the disability sector from an advocacy point of view. And I really, like Allison said, very passionate about the space. So, in this podcast, you are definitely going to hear a lot of passion, a lot of strong beliefs, and we're going to challenge you as the listener to really think about things relating to disability and all things disability. And hopefully, Allison's law know-how and my practical know-how will be able to combine very strongly to be able to make some really entertaining podcasts that you guys can take in and discuss. It's going to be controversial. It's going to be a little bit in your face, as the DeFranco name would represent.
I can't help myself. I'm
Right,
sorry. It's Sicilian just running through the
right.
blood,
Yeah,
so
nothing's going to change in a hurry about that. But we
yeah.
are going to give you some really good, I think, perspectives on things that you might not think about, and that's what I love about this podcast.
Yeah, I think this is going to be just talking about disability, having both of us worked in it in one way or another professionally for our careers. Both of us coming from the blind community, and I think both of us having kind of the you've got that professional side where you're wearing a suit, and I think here we're I'm wearing actually a rugby shirt today from the Adirondacks. It's a Can-Am. We have the biggest rugby tournament in North America every year here. So I'm wearing an Adirondack Mountaineers rugby shirt.
Rugby. Now
Um,
she did tell me that it's too hot to wear a hockey jersey, but rugby jerseys are typically just as thick, or
yeah,
if not thicker. You're kind of wearing the new rugby jersey.
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah,
It
because my
wasn't the
hockey
old
my
stuff.
hockey jerseys are the ones
Yeah.
that yeah.
If you put on that
True.
All Blacks jersey that you have, that's going to be a bit warmer.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we can get into a physical like throat punching fight on a podcast through this for
Right.
everyone. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think also I just kind of want to like throw out how did we come up with this name? Because I think that's sort of like the interesting story to start things, right? Which was I was honored and privileged a couple of weeks ago to be one of the guests on another my kangaroo friends podcast, hashtag blind talk, like blind TOK talk podcast. Um, and the night before we were talking and we're talking about things there's so much disability, so cross-cutting, obviously every sector, obviously diversity, the diversity of disability types, representation, all of that. And there's a lot of infighting and disagreements, and all of that is good and healthy. But one of the big topics that a lot of people think is interesting that I don't have as big of an opinion. I have a lot of strong opinions on a lot of things, but is related to person first language. So if you're not familiar with that, the idea that you put person first, a person with a disability. So if you've heard of the convention, it's convention of persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, children with disabilities. First, on the other side, you have identity first, where people put their disability first. So you may say a disabled woman, a blind woman. And people feel really very strongly both ways. Now, from a legal perspective, laws in the US and globally are all person first at this point. So in my writing and my professional setting, and generally in a lot of ways, because of my own story, person first is where I go. However, I found myself a lot in the last year with creating content going identity first as a disabled woman. And here's the thing, Murray was telling me he got in a little bit of a disagreement with one of his other co-hosts on another amazing podcast. He has a lot of podcasts, by the way.
I do.
Where they got into a real disagreement about it. And I just said, Murray, do you want to hear my opinion? This is one thing in disability world. I just don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. And that kind of
I
led.
was unprepared for that response, by the way.
You were really thinking I was going to go strong one way or
Yeah.
the other,
Right.
probably, and I think a lot of people, I get that question a lot, and people, it's the one area where I'm like, there are a lot of words have meaning, words have power, but I personally can find power in how I present myself both ways. And first off, and also I respect very much how we have people in the autistic community largely identify identity first. You have a lot of people in the deaf community. So it's like that respect angle. But I also have worked in countries where people literally will say to me, people don't see us as people at all. So they're very passionate on person first. And then you have language translations. Like in Armenian language, if you were to do identity first, it's almost like referring to somebody as a piece of fruit, which obviously is taking away the humanity of a person.
Well, you would be a kiwi fruit for sure.
Happily, right? So when I was just like, I just don't give a fuck. And the next sentence, and I think it was probably the first time that Murray got to hear that, I was like, I've always thought I should have a podcast where I just there are so many things that as a disability movement, if we could have these hard conversations and then sort of agree to disagree where we have to, because we have to deal with a world of ableism and discrimination, and everyone is against us. Like we're still one giant family. We're the biggest marginalized population in the world. If we work together, can you imagine? They want us divided. And that's where I was like, I just kind of want to I'd love to have a podcast where I just told everyone to shut the fuck up, whether it be ableists or people with disabilities when they need to be told in a nice way.
In a nice way. That's
Yeah,
how.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's a
Allison.
nice way. It's
He,
not a
he
nice way
came
to
from
the ableists.
a
Not
nice.
to the ableists.
We're helping you help yourself. Remember that.
Yeah, like it's like all love. I grew up, as everyone's gonna know, a lot is on listening to Eminem and Pink. So it's all I
So get
love.
ready. Get ready. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to
So
be
so
profanity.
that's sort of where the name came from.
It,
And did you want
I
to add to that? Because I know
well,
I know you also had said you feel very strongly about the person first thing.
well, I think this podcast isn't just meant to be the United States. So that's the first thing. Is
Sure.
we hope that we're going to have listeners all over the world, where we can touch on relevant topics from all over the world. And it's very different in the United States compared to most of the rest of the world as it relates to disability and how people think about disability and even the wording about disability. And as you just said, person first language is standard practice now in Australia, but also across the UK, and other parts of the world where they've bought into disability, reforming of terms like, one word that is still used here a lot is, um, instead of like disability parking, is handicap parking, right?
Right.
And that was changed a long time ago, but the word still stays and people use handicapped. I went to a restaurant 2 weeks ago where they said handicapped entrance, and I was appalled. It's like, man,
Wow.
am I
Wow.
in
Yeah.
the
Like that.
1970s?
Were you like, shut the F up on that
I
one?
did. I said, shut the F up and change your sign to
Yeah.
acceptable entrance. but
Yeah.
but that's the thing is, like, I want people to watch this podcast, and people might think, oh, this is a disability podcast listened to by people with disabilities or disabled people, whichever is your flavor. And but it's not really. It's about, actually, we use terms, and we're going to talk about the R word today that's prevalent in society, and we're going to break it down a little bit. But it's for those people who maybe use that word in their regular
Yeah.
conversations but don't really understand the meaning of it. We want people without disabilities to also be listening to this podcast, because it's a way to be able to break down these barriers. I have so many meetings in a corporate setting where people are like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, we really want to help and we really want to be involved, but I don't want to get cancelled by culture. I don't want to say the wrong things. This podcast is for you people, because that's the only way you can learn, right? I'm not
Yeah.
about like being precious. We all say things or do things that are offensive to others at one point or
Sure.
another. And some of the time we don't even know that it is offensive.
Right.
And so this podcast is equally for people in the mainstream as it is for people in the disability community. And I think that's really important to say off the bat.
Big time. Absolutely. And also there, I think that we have a distinction that there's a lot of people like exactly that really do want to understand and feel very like, ooh, I so nervous. People without disabilities, so nervous about what they can and can't say that they tiptoe around it, and they would be our best allies, right? And if we, the only way to debunk a stigma is to talk about it. It's the only way to do it. And that's the problem, is that that we don't do that enough, broadly enough in society, and that's what we want to do here. And also, I think having a disability, I can definitely say there is a major difference in people who are sincerely, genuinely interested in learning and wanting to do better versus people who are still very much stuck in a very discriminatory type of mindset, and I think that understanding is that we want to be breaking that down as well.
And we want to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
The world takes itself pretty seriously these days, and there's a lot of stuff, that people are pretty hung up on, and that's okay. We want you to be passionate like we are, but we also want to have fun with things as well, and we want to engage you guys, and not it be like a cancel culture thing or a political drag
Yeah.
fest thing. We want this to be an open-ended discussion where we can take a topic, really rip it apart, talk about the good and the bad of it, and then get your opinion on it,
Yeah.
because it's really important that we engage with each other. There's, like you said, Allison, there's not a lot of conversation that's back and forth these days. Is that I believe this, F you if you don't. Like, we're
Exactly.
not about that. We are definitely about engaging and finding out what you think.
Exactly. And I think it's worth plugging really quickly that we are planning to do some TikTok live. So for people who are watching and know us from our TikTok community, one of the things that we've talked about is that doing lives following episodes where it's having discussions about the topic. So it's bringing in the community and being able to have the discussions. So I think we'll be providing information about that. Also just started a TikTok account so that we can be providing those types of updates when people can be expecting that stuff.
And of course, it would be remiss talking live TikToks without addressing the battle of the beefs, which has been going on for a number of weeks between our sheep shaggy here and Blueberry, Jesse Evans. And so if you haven't watched hashtag Blind Talk, what episode were you? 9?
I was episode 8, I think, and she was episode 7, and she stole my story. That's when the beef began. I actually began 30 years ago, but
Right.
I've got a lot of fidget toys on hand to, if I need to bring this into the beef or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The battle. Yeah, you guys
So
all,
the battle
everyone.
of the beef, I think, needs to be part of our first live.
Yeah. The battle of the Star Guardian.
Yeah, the battle of the Star Guardians. And then I know TJ wants to weigh in with the tunnelers, retinitis pigmentosa versus the Star Guardians. So that's maybe episode 2 of the live.
Is that even? Wait, I'm sorry to the tunnelers, but wait, what kind of beef battle is that? I mean,
well, I think it's the Star Guardians.
Jesse Blueberry makes me a little nervous. I mean,
right. Well, she'll be on your side for episode 2 if you don't do episode 1. So something to look forward to.
That's what I'm saying, though. Is she makes me nervous, but like, I don't know, TJ, you're gonna have to show me who are the tunnelers, because when Jesse Blueberry fires back at me every time, it's always when I'm super busy, by the way. So I have to. I'm like, oh man, and her stuff is good. Like when she's gonna like attack me with worms and she's digging up. I mean, she's really. You don't know.
There was talk of chainsaws at one point, I think. It gets pretty violent in the beef battle of the beef.
So you're right. Once we're on the same side, I don't know.
Right. That would be bad news for the tunnelers.
So I think that one of the things we had said that we also kind of want to set the tone with each week is starting off with kind of what of our 3 shut the F ups of the week. And I this is the first time I'll tell Murray why this is kind of a story for me, is when I lived on this tiny island in Ireland, Inishmore. So if you've ever been to Ireland or you're from Ireland, it's off of the coast of Galway. I think the full-time yearly population might be 700 people. And when I met the ambassador to the UN from Ireland years ago, and I was telling her, oh, I lived in Inishmore for about a year, she told me that I should write a book someday and say, how the fuck do you, it should be called How the Fuck I Landed in Inishmore. And but so just to give a sense of it, it's pretty remote, but every day I had 3 friends that you'd walk to the little shop and you would see the friends, and every day out of the 7 people and be like, somehow we just started jokingly ranking, so who are your top 3 today? And it would all, my one friend would always be like, it's my friend from Poland would be like, oh, so and so, so and so, and so and so, and they'd be like, why? Oh, well, that one, he gave me cigarettes for free, so I didn't have to get all the way to the shop. But it was every day it just became this joke that for some reason I think works really well, because now in my life I'm usually every day I'm like, that needs to shut up, that so.
Yeah. So would you like to start us off, kick us off in episode 1 with your top 3 shut the F ups? Now you're gonna think.
I feel like you got to go, because I have them in mind, and I actually have one for you probably.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right, yeah, why don't you start us off with your 3?
Well, some of these are going to be cryptic, all right? So we're not just going to give you what they are. You're going to have to maybe think about it a little bit. So number 1 with a bullet is QC, shut the F up. Okay.
Yeah.
QC, shut the F up. No one
know
what that means, but that's okay. But Allison and I know what that means.
Yeah, and Allison's number 1 might be Murray, shut the F up about this.
Number 2, Kiwi fans of any kind in any sport, shut the F up.
And I'm gonna learn the haka. Okay. Yep. All right. Number 2. Yep. Fair enough.
Pretend blind tennis players who aren't really going to play, shut the F up.
Are you kidding? I am the whole reason everyone who doesn't know why I'm getting slammed as a pretend blind tennis player is because the other day I went out there and I was hitting a stitch ball and a Spider-Man ball back and forth and you know
Christmas lights around your tennis
yeah
outfit. I
yeah
mean,
I mean
come
I
on.
had a hard
Hard
helmet
hat,
on.
hard
Yeah,
hat. You
a
brought
bright pink
multiple
one.
sets of glasses to match your hard hat.
Right.
All
My
right.
flamingo glasses. I mean, and and I announced that I'm gonna be at the blind tennis nationals, like as a champion. And literally 2 days later, I mean, this kind of well-known person, Serena Williams, announces she's coming back.
Right.
Coincidence? I don't think so. I think
I
she's
mean,
like,
there may be some coaching from a Serena Williams, but even if you do
yeah.
get coaching from Serena, you still ain't beating me.
She might need some coaching from me though. She's
I
been
mean,
off for
you
a couple
might.
of years, and
You might.
after my intense workout the other day,
Yeah. Although you
yeah,
keep telling you, you've got to hit a ball to somebody else, not yourself.
yeah. All right. Hey Bennett, can we play tennis together sometime?
Can
I,
you can you get
if
your mum to videotape that?
Yeah, one of them will try.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
So
get my mom.
they're my episode one top three.
All right, you're
15
wow.
Kiwi fans of any age or any grouping, anything, and pretend blind tennis players.
All right, so I guess wow, that you really went after me there. I think I have to go with like my top three this week are like shut the f up to people who have these weird obsessions with QCs, which y'all don't totally know it yet, but Murray has weird obsessions. I get these messages all this time about this one thing. Uh, And I definitely have to say it will never stop being a shut the F up for me when it comes to the fake service dog thing. I cannot stand, and I'm not talking about people who don't or who've been given wrong advice by their doctors and like about emotional support animal and say, oh, you have the documentation, you can bring your, because I've seen that this week kind of getting attention where doctors give the wrong information. We need to raise awareness. I'm talking about people who bring, like, if I bring one of my dogs to a restaurant and I just lie and say, yeah, no, this is a service animal, and what that has just does to so many people who have service animals. I see it all the time. It just needs to shut the fuck up. And finally, I just think that right now people from a place where Alice Springs, if Alice Springs is the country that you're from, just shut the
Wow.
fuck up. Shut the fuck
Wow.
up.
Okay. Alice Springs. The
Yeah.
whole of Alice Springs.
So yeah, and if people don't know, Alice Springs just happens to be in Australia. It's
She
like
has been there at least to
I
be
have been there. It's the
there.
only place on planet Earth that it's like you could anywhere I've been that I'm like I just don't like that. Not
Now
no, and I'm not saying the Outback in full. Like now I'll never do like another 2 week Outback trip again. I've done that.
right.
But Alice Springs itself, whew,
Alice Springs is
that
hard.
was an experience. Yeah, everyone
So,
was mean.
so now you've got to tell the story about the why Alice Springs, especially with the lizard,
Yeah.
the whole thing. You got to explain.
Well, I feel like that's probably like we need to get into that more because the whole Outback story like is something that could be
Right.
10, 10 minutes. Yeah. I mean, Alice Springs itself wasn't so much to the lizard. I am a blind person who had a lizard fall on my head in like one of they have like kind of these hut places that are like hostels, hotels. And as I was opening the door and I was with a friend from Sweden at the time and she just started screaming and ran away. And all I knew is there was something on my head, you
You got to
know?
when you say someone from Sweden, you got to put it in the ABBA voice, like the Sweden. Yeah.
But she was like the calmest, nicest person. So when she was screaming in my face and then ran, I literally thought, I don't know, everything in Australia can kill you, first off, from sharks to jellyfish to
Co-host.
absolutely everything, right? You like when you go there, you're like told, like, the spiders of this. So I was convinced I had something fall on my head and it was over. Life was over. It was good. But I feel like, yeah, just Alice Springs itself, it was like everything like the booking I had with like the hostel, I just happened me and one other person, they didn't have it correct. So
They do have good meat pies in the mall, the little mall.
I don't know. Everything was just like, it was one of those things where it was probably I was just there on a day where everything was off, but they didn't have my booking correct. They literally had like us sleep on like a hallway. Like they found like two beds and they were like, oh, sorry about that. And just every single thing you go into a restaurant, like the meat pies. Oh yeah, no, we don't have anything. And it was just
Yeah.
but by the end of the day, like me and the one other person that this was happening to were just like, dude, Alice Springs, everything's happening because of Alice Springs.
Can I ask you
That,
one question?
yeah.
was it that you were wearing a New Zealand
No, no,
shirt, an identifier? Because
no,
then it starts to make sense. A lot of
no.
sense.
No, I'm smart enough that even when I'm like in Lombok, Indonesia, I don't, I one time wore a shirt that said I support two teams, New Zealand and when I'm playing Australia,
Mm,
to the breakfast buffet in Lombok, at the hotel. And within about 4 minutes, I had enough Aussie, just
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I was, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. I'm like that person running out being like, I love Sydney. It's so great. I love the Gold Coast. Like, yeah, so no,
Yeah.
I wasn't. It was, but I do want to say, I think the Outback story is kind of more of a broader travel story because that was just, when you spend 2 weeks in the Outback, you can't even cover that. And
So
we
get
would,
ready to shut that F up.
but I will say,
Travel
no,
story.
I will say Uluru. I mean, man, the Outback there's unbelievable stuff. Just Alice Springs. Oh, shut the fuck up.
All right. So today's episode one, we are talking about what, Allison?
We are going to go right into one of the hottest topics, and there are a lot of hot topics right now, a lot of hot topics related to disability, and including something that just came out today, which actually we haven't had a chance to talk about. So the
So
thing
no,
that
no spoilers. Okay, you've already spoiled another episode with your
no,
show.
no, no, no. This is something that I think we're gonna have to mention because it's going to be within this conversation,
Okay.
so it's interesting. But we are going to go right into the R slur and this, and like, look, we're not afraid to take a stand here. We're gonna go through it. We're gonna go through the history. What are like the issues with it? What is its history? And what like also talk about what's going on in society with the whole idea that it's coming back and it's okay to come back. Why are we seeing that? So I think that this is a topic that is I'm going to say it's unfortunate that it's such a hot topic right now. It's a topic that I would have liked to say, you know, just it's the
I
R
don't want.
slur. We're not,
Yeah.
people get it. It's like some other things, but I think where this topic is really why we need to dig into it right now is it comes to a lot of areas where disability kind of always comes to the what about us? Why the fuck is it okay to use that word? But in other terms, like in other groups, it would absolutely people would be canceled, rightfully so, right? And I think we see this too much on disability issues, and I think that's the reason that we decided to take this on in the first episode with this.
Yeah, it's a big topic, and I think just again from the introduction point of shining a light on things, and for those people who do use it in their regular vernacular in society and don't understand it,
Hmm.
like we hope that you will listen to this and be able to, or if you're listening to it and you know somebody who uses it, tell somebody,
Yeah.
have a conversation about it. Like that's really important. So let's start with the actual definition. The word comes from a Latin word called retardare, meaning slow down or delayed. So that's the original meaning from the Latin word, and that's where the medical diagnosis term comes from. Alison, you want to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's worth noting that part of, in this term, in terms of it being a medical diagnosis, in terms of if you watch documentaries such as Crip Camp and you see the beginning of the disability rights movement, I mean, they're using this. It was a diagnosis. It was a word that was used. And some people will say, well, it didn't really start to become, challenge or an issue until the late 70s or 80s. And one of the things I want to remind people is no, some of this word in particular, and there are other words that the only reason that they weren't things that we started to challenge was because people who were diagnosed with this. So now we've changed it. We'll often intellectual disability, developmental disability, but people with all types of disabilities have been called this, including myself. We'll get to that story, but you know, it's part of the eugenics movement. It's part of the labeling from a medical perspective, and then having people put off in institutions. Telling doctors literally telling parents when they have a child. This is the history and of th you don't want this. You put it in an institution, it's going to be better. And absolutely atrocious settings, institutions, and that type of stuff. So I think it's interesting because sometimes people will assume that the issues around it started to happen when it started to get more popularized in society at the same time when we were starting in the US and around the globe, but the US in the 70s started to deinstitutionalize. Not fully, but that movement, and all of a sudden you start seeing in the late 70s, early 80s in TV shows and culture, which are reflections of society. I do want to point that out, right? But when people think that that word, as well as some of the other words that we don't challenge as hard, I don't challenge as hard, but I will kind of, I stay away from using certain words. But no one reclaims that word. That's one thing I want to say. But that word is something that never had a positive history. It has a history linked into eugenics, and really a sad history that which we could go into more, I think, if we have the TikTok live and people are interested in having that discussion and learning more. But just because I think we also want to get to why we are here now in 2026, back to the fact that there's literally people online saying, no, like it's fine to say.
Yeah. I think like the part that you bring up is really true. Like, and sometimes we don't even think about it, like when it's a conversation, someone says it. But since we started talking about this episode 1, I've heard it 3 times in the last week, with people who I might not have thought would have actually ever said it. And that brings it to a head, right? It's like when we just bought a new car and now you see that car everywhere on the road, right? It's the same sort of thing as you started playing tennis, so now you're going to see tennis everywhere, right? But it's that thing that's in your face, but sometimes we don't even acknowledge it or understand what it is, and then it happens, and I'm like, wow, okay. So when I've heard it in the last three days, I'm like, well, why would you say that? And they said, oh, well, and they don't have an excuse to say that. They don't understand why they said that. It's a word now in pop culture that's used to what your point was, that is ignorant and offensive. And people say, well, why is it offensive, right? So it's offensive because it replicates a medical condition through a disability that is a fundamental word. And I'll give you an example of how it offends people. I worked in Australia, and we worked in a combined office with something like 35 to 40 different sports. And I had a girl, a dual Paralympian, summer and winter Paralympian, very accomplished. She's part of the women's cerebral palsy soccer team at the moment for Australia. And so great athlete. She was working for me. And in this shared office, there was a sport with 2 guys talking about playing the night before their sport. And one of them used the R word to describe another one's play in front of the person with cerebral palsy. And so it really hit a nerve for her. And she came and spoke to me. I was the CEO of the company at the time. And I went and spoke to the other CEO of the other company and said, hey, this is what happened is, I have an employee with cerebral palsy. This conversation happened in front of her. She felt really, really bad about hearing the word in the regular conversation that kind of, impacted her significantly. And I think it's good that, we have a conversation with the 2 guys, because I want them to understand why it offended her, and why it shouldn't be used in regular conversation. And that happened. And they had no idea. Like, they had no idea that that word related to her condition and how it made her feel. And so, a lot of times we'll say ignorant things. And, I think, Allison, you brought up a good point, right? It's in other minority groups, there's words that everybody's very careful not to say. And what happens is that disability, especially I think in the United States, but certainly all over the world, is the last thing people consider. Disability is this kind of thing where, like you said, hey, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, people used to get put in institutions for having Down syndrome or, having an intellectual disability. And so it has come through the understanding of what we're doing. And so we really need to understand that holistic thing of it's in correlation to, not using the N word for race as an example.
Right.
And we have to start thinking in those terms and thinking about how it makes people feel and thinking about the humiliation that it makes people feel when they hear it.
Yeah, and you make a good point with whether it be the N word or if you're talking about the F word from the LGBTQ community, just words. One of the things that's been very interesting, though, what I'm seeing with this online resurgence and some of the things that people are saying, and I do believe that there's a big difference between people who are ignorant and the conversations that they just, because this, again, we live in a world where we don't have these conversations enough about disability, right? There's a big difference between the people in raising awareness versus people who are gonna really go out there and defend and say, no, no, it's not a slur anymore. No, when people use that, or when it's said, it's not mean this or that, or some people are saying, like, even it has nothing to do with disability. I saw a video where somebody was like, yeah, it's kind of like just reclaiming it in a power way. And it was somebody with no disability whatsoever. And I saw a lot of creators that did a really nice job being like, this is a word that's never been reclaimed.
Right.
You're trying to make a parallel to the N word being reclaimed, to other words being reclaimed by certain people. If within the disability community, I could say, quite frankly, like, I, being a blind person, cannot reclaim the word crip, right? I have friends though who with physical disabilities who, proudly are like, yeah, I'm crip, but will be the first to, call me out, right? So, and I know within the blind community, we there are some things that we can say, right? And that is part of how language evolves. I will also say this though, because I think you made a point, that's a good point. We're saying, well, in the US with language, I will say, obviously, having worked in a lot of different countries and different continents, I mean, the terminology in and the view of disability really just in some places, for whether it be cultural reasons, whether it be religious reasons, different religions having different views of it based on how it's viewed in different cultures. Disability is, I mean, the treatment of people with disabilities around the world is still just atrocious. And some of the terminology is, absolutely within, when I'll be in a country and some of my friends are providing translation and they're explaining what the translations mean. I've had translators you can tell that are embarrassed to even try to, and I'm like, no, I need to hear it exactly like what is being said. And yeah, so just to put that out there, because I do think sometimes people in America will compare only to other English speaking countries, right?
Right.
And that's got its value for sure, of course. But when we're talking about the whole world, let's talk about the whole world. Again, let's be inclusive of all of the world.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel comfortable talking about your own experience with this word when someone uses
Yeah,
it
I
against
would.
you?
No, I feel very comfortable with this actually. Thank you for that. Is early in my traveling, where was I going? So I was in college, I believe. I was headed towards Slovakia at the time. And one of the airports that I was transferring in, I literally, and this was just kind of the beginning. I still wasn't very comfortable identifying anything about my vision. And I look back on some of the things that people said to me back in the day, and there's a reason. There's a hardcore reason, when I think about it. But it was in Paris, I remember, and I just was the flight board. Can't see the flight board. This is way before you have phones that you can easily take a picture and zoom in, or have seeing eye read it to you. You know what I mean? And also, when you're legally blind, just so people give perspective, you can't easily find, or then in particular, if they had information booths back then, like, they weren't something that was easily accessible to find. So people who I travel now, I still travel very frequently, no problem. I just have a lot of stories from my experiences. But I just went up to somebody. There's one person. So this was like the least, I was like, oh, wow, this is so comfortable. I don't have to like, and I just said, hey, could you let me know when the flight to Prague is? And this person just turns to me and is like, are you effing R word? And like, I looked at them and they said it like three times. I
Wow.
was, and it was just one of those moments that, it's like, well,
It just stays with you.
how is that? How is that the response though? How is that the
Yeah.
response? And I know at the time I had a few friends who were deaf who, like, I remember sharing it, who had experiences where they would be going through the security line, right? Where here in the US in particular, but even like, in the earlier like 2000s kind of close post 9/11, where you had really heavy security everywhere in the world in all airports and people yelling at you in security lines. I mean, I had friends that, they're verbally yelling stuff, and this was before they had good signage, right? And they would like end up being able to lip read the people saying like, "Are you R word?" And it's just like, how is that something that even comes to mind to say? How,
Yeah.
But
It's,
yeah, I
but it
think
stays with you, right? I mean, it
it,
forms how you felt when somebody says it. And like my story, with my employee, it's hard to understand unless you actually live it, right? And
mhm,
so we've both been through schooling with blindness and low vision, and people can be really tough on you. You know, it's a bad environment to grow up in, and to get past that and then to be productive and, you know, do things in your life and feel good about yourself is hard enough. And so we're talking about this today because we want you to put yourself in that person's position. Is, you know, when you use this word, that's what happens. It'd be like, think about you as a person listening to this podcast, and think about something that someone could say to you that would be the most impactful thing to make you feel horrific and bad about yourself. That's how it affects people. And so when you use it, you know, be cognizant of that. Think about that. And you know, no one's perfect, right? We all say things and do things that we wish we could take back. And again, it's not a cancel culture podcast. We get that, you know, this is part of society. And in a minute, we'll talk about how it's being used in part of society and pop culture. But, you know, we want you to start to think about these things in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, there's two parts to that as well, is that for anyone who's starting a disability journey, you know, like I was, that it's very, you're going through something, especially as a teenager girl, you know, in my early 20s. It's already enough, you know, in this world. And then throw in the vision thing and starting to build the confidence to ask for things I needed, which now I have no problem asking. And I also have a very, you know, my words are my weapon in terms of if somebody says that to me, they're going to get quite the nice conversational topic back. Like that will.
We have a real hard time believing that, actually. You know,
Yeah, right.
you're so meek and mild about everything.
Yeah, I really am. I think somebody the other day like told me not to take a photo of them when I had my camera out and I was zooming in, and I was like, "You must have such a boring life if you think that I would photo you."
Was it Serena Williams?
No, it wasn't, because
Was
I would be photoing her. Yeah.
Pink or Eminem? Was it either of those two?
No. It was definitely somebody who I literally was like, "You must have such a boring life if you think I'm photoing you."
Right.
But I think it really it played a huge role in me continuing to hide and pretend I could see, and masking and passing as a sighted person, and putting myself in dangerous situations. Ultimately, that happened because of that, and that's something I know other people, you know, could relate to as well. Um, but it's also like how, again, I want people to just think about why, when somebody you've never met, like just think of like kindness, right? It's so easy to just to be nice. Like, why is that something, you know, when you think about why that would be something that would come to mind when somebody asks for help at all in this world, you know? Because you don't know anyone's story.
That's
Um,
very, very true. You don't know that you are loving in New Zealand, and, you know, then you found out about sheep
yeah.
speaking, and then you're thinking twice about it. Let's turn.
See, these are fair. Those are fair jokes. Totally inappropriate. Like,
Right.
yeah.
We love Kiwis. I mean,
I've been called a Kiwi loving sheep shagger. Thank
right.
you. You know, that's fine. That's funny. It's not
It
funny
is.
when I'm asking for help, or anyone else with any type of disability, you know, again, and this is where I'm going to keep saying it. Pink, when are you going to come and sing for us? Because I will relentlessly tag you, Pink. But what about us? What about us?
Just remember, Pink. You know, Americans try to love you, but Australians actually do. I mean, you're so much more popular in Australia than you are anywhere else in the world.
Oh
So if you're
man.
going to come onto the podcast and love somebody, it's the Australian, right?
Fine, fair enough. But I do have I have a video when she was singing "So What" on Soldier Stadium in August 2024, and when she could flew above me, and the whole time like she was zooming in, and my friends got really good seats for us, you know, because they knew with my vision, they knew I liked her a lot. But when she flew right above me, I screamed like I was like a One Direction fan. That's what it sounds like,
Right.
you know. So if we're in a competition, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Okay. I'll get ready to that across the court when we're playing each
yeah.
other at nationals. Tell us about the law and how that changed in relation to this
Yeah.
word in 2010 because of Rose's law.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I actually learned a little bit. I wasn't exactly remembering the year itself. I did know it was within the Obama administration time period. But yeah, Rose's Law. So at the federal level, the R word has been removed, and I believe across all federal laws, like so, including the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and has been replaced with, I believe, in any of all of the situations in the federal laws, with intellectual disability.
That's correct. Yeah.
And what's interesting about this as well, and I remembered it, and then you kind of reminded me with some of the notes you had shared that prior to the federal law, a state had made this decision, which was Maryland.
Yep.
And it's, some of the things when it comes to words in laws, as a lawyer, I will say this, it can be really challenging. I mean, you're talking about just like words where sometimes people are like, yes, we both come from common law countries where people fight out things, over a couple of words in court, right? And the definition. But when it comes to the name of a law, I mean, people are like, so it was a pretty big deal that, that question, do laws change attitudes or do attitudes change laws, right? And I think both, it's a circular thing. But I think the advocacy that you really started to see at the same time, in the late 80s all the way to 2010 in the US and around the world led to a absolutely monumental, had to happen type of change. And there are some other words that we still see in at the federal level that I think people would like to see removed, but it takes a lot of effort. But yeah, the fact that that is just, adds to it. It makes it even more clear. It's a no-no. It's a no-no.
Yeah, well, the law was changed on October 5, 2010, and it's Public Law number 111-256, Rose's Law. And it talks about, and I've seen this in other parts. So there's an 8-year-old boy in Australia, or at the time he was 8 years old. And from the time he was 5, his family and he advocated to Parliament to have Braille on all of the notes that Australia uses, like the dollar bills. And they finally got it passed. And so, sometimes, a lot of the time, actually, it's these people who have this, real hunger for change
Mhm.
that make the biggest changes. And
Yeah.
for people who are listening who want something changed, advocate. We talk about, in the blindness setting, the NFB and an ACB as the two peak bodies for blindness and low vision in the United States. And they do a lot of advocacy around changing laws. But it takes people, it takes real stories and real examples to make big change. And I think that this is another example of a family who really supported Rose's vision for what they wanted to have changed and how she wanted to be represented that made that big change. And it's outstanding.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And I think that for our listeners, it's really important to understand that one perspective that I have kind of comes from a slightly different kind of approach than certain other people that are in the same field of work as me. A lot of people will feel very strongly that you have to be loud, you have to be proud to be a disability advocate, you have to be this, you have to be that. And I think that's where people have burnout, because some people take on everything, or they just feel like, well, I'm not, this person's important. I'm not. Everyone, we're all important with and without disabilities, right? And but advocacy can look so different, but it's like finding where your comfort, where your strength, and where you're going to build confidence and where you can contribute. Some of us are better public speakers, some of us are better at writing, some of us love, me myself actually love just, calling and leaving messages to my local congresswoman,
You got her on speed dial, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of her at all, but uh, but yeah, but I want people to realize that because sometimes it's, yeah, there's people that are absolutely the rock stars of any movement, but there's the other rock stars are just everyone doing something is what makes change happen. And I feel that way everywhere in the world, every country I've been to, no, like it, and I always say this too, that people outside of the US, which is largely a lot of my work has been outside of the US. I'll always say, hey, I'm from a small town in northern New York State, population 4,000. I don't know your safety situation. You need to know how far you can push when you're pushing something with your government or with whatever it may be. You need
100%.
to, but here's all the tool sets, and I think, and that's part of, I think, what helps people understand it too, that it's that ownership,
Yeah.
that I can't do this, you can't, we can't, no one can do this alone. And again, we're the largest marginalized population in the world. And for listeners who I'm hoping, also that are not, that are our true allies. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's over 1.3 billion of us, then add our family members, add all of that. We have this power. We just need to be having these conversations, and we need to be willing to say that it's okay. You don't have to be as out and in people's faces as other people, because we all have our own roles.
And you'd worked previously with the Paralympic Games in
Hmm.
2012. I'd worked with Sydney, obviously, in supporting the Sydney Games for Paralympics. And one thing that they talk about now is We the 15, and it's 15% of the population has
Hmm.
a
Yeah,
inherent disability, and so and 60 to 80% of people in their lifetime will have a temporary disability.
sure.
So it's an impactful thing to talk
Yeah,
about that we are the many in instances. And to your point earlier, you just need to think before you say something, and
yeah.
think about how it makes people feel. Like, that's really important. We're
Hmm.
going to move on to another part of this topic that I'm really excited to talk about. It's pop culture, right? So
Yeah,
this word that's the episode, the R word, is used fairly prevalently in pretty popular TV shows, and it's interesting the type of TV show that it is. I think when we did our research, things like South Park that features the character Timmy as an example, where he's front and center in the storyline, and there's probably good and bad, um, paintings
yeah,
of what he can do and what he can't do, and his character. There's Family Guy, which the word's
yeah.
been used in as well. And I think it's interesting, right? They're two probably top pop culture shows that everybody's seen. And I want to ask you, you know, is putting the word into those shows a good thing or a bad thing? And I'll put it from the perspective of, is it building awareness about aspects of why you shouldn't say it, or why you should say it, or is it putting it out there for controversy? Tell me about your thoughts about that word
Yeah.
in those
Well, I think that those are two really good examples. South Park, I mean, that goes back to what is it, 20 something years now.
yeah.
Um, and Family Guy, I mean, I don't know if when it ended or if it ended, but that is a bit older as well. So we'll start there. I think that personally, that a lot we have to remember that art, whether it be through TV shows, whether it be through music, whether it be through movies, if it's fictional, is a reflection of society. I think at the time South Park, I was in high school, and I definitely, was not yet understanding or thinking these things through in the same way. However, I mean, I do remember, like, it was very popular. People really liked it, and I think a lot of people really liked Timmy as a character.
Yeah.
I will
Well,
remember
and the
that.
word, and I just watched a video on TikTok the other day of a person in an electric wheelchair doing a nitro circus jump um, in between the things, and they were playing the word Timmy nonstop. And so the
Yeah,
correlation of people doing positive things in Timmy's circumstances is a thing, but also derogatory as well. I've seen both sides of that. So,
sure.
I
Well,
think
also,
that's the thing, right? Is like, is it good or bad, and is it subjective, right? Is it good to just throw something out there and have it be subjective, or do you think it's not
I
a
think, yeah, that's a good question. I also think, though, and again, it's been a long time. I'd have to really go back and this is a great thing, by the way, for the Disability Power Arena to have a pop culture night on South Park. So this is a great reminder. But some of the other characters would have definitely been considered having some type of disability representation. Um, like, I'm not remembering it perfectly, like Carmen,
yeah.
but there's certain things that there was at the time, and I would say an attempt. Now, not studying it perfectly right now, but
Well,
I
like Kyle, right? He was a Jewish character, and they made a
right.
lot of episodes about the Jewish
Mhm.
people. And so I think, like, Cartman, obese and overweight, like you're right, they had certain things that they really pushed as narratives through that show.
So I think I would say, and again, that time frame, and that show, and Family Guy as well. Now, Family Guy, I definitely watched. I'm not remembering the stuff quite as much, but I would say are both at the time periods. I do think that, again, a reflection of society. So is it pushing the narrative by by showing by putting a mirror up to us. And really, for me, and in most instances, I will say it opens the conversation. It does not mean that this is okay or not okay. It means this is what society is. Let's talk about it. Um, that's the way I kind of looked at it then. What is interesting is I think there was a period of time that we didn't see the word used nearly as much, or sorry, just not just even that word, just kind of in mainstream TV shows. I think you've got a list of kind of the shows, but there's the re-emergence of it again. And the question there is, why is the re-emergence? It's not, to me, it's like we're not hearing it come back in society and people use it because TV shows are doing that. TV shows are reflecting, you
Right.
know, I think, for example, another show and going slightly off of the word, but the word has been used. Let's also be clear. It's been used on very broadly on different disability types, on people with Down syndrome, on the autistic community. And you looked at Glee. I think Glee came out in 2010. That was his first season, I believe. And you had a character who was using a wheelchair, and Glee got a little bit of a backlash that the character was not actually somebody who used a wheelchair. And I think that at the time, again, I want to put into what one of the things that's important whenever we're having a discussion that this is 16 years ago, right? That things we keep changing. So there are definitely things I could probably look back on Glee and say, okay, that, this, whatever. But at the time, they then did bring in two characters that were had Down syndrome playing those characters have Down syndrome. And I think, trying to raise awareness of a lot of different things in society. So I'm just kind of like putting it out there. It's like, so what are TV shows? Is it because I don't think that gamers that, I'm not gonna, like, my brother happens to be here. I'll ask him later, but
Yeah.
he's big into gaming to this day. I mean, I definitely know he has told me before other words, like he's literally left Discord groups because of some of the things. Um, but I know, it's like, is it a popular word? I know we've seen that is somewhere it's reemerging type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it opens conversations personally, and I feel
What?
really
Yeah.
strongly about that. I will say, especially in music, um, that and I think there's one song, that really switched the narrative that kind of did play into whole, wait, is this okay or not, right? And that was Black Eyed Peas. I don't know if you had a chance to look up what year that came out. I think I want to say it was about 2004 with
Yeah. What year that came out?
the song "Let's Get Into It," "Let's Get Stupid," "Let's Get R word, R word, R word, R word," and I think that got heavily criticized because first off, you're putting the word stupid, you're talking about drinking, and it's a
Yeah.
party song at a club for people using that word. So, but again, it opened up, and it was shortly after their song "Where's the Love." But we do have to be aware of the fact that these are conversations that have to be had. Why are people saying any of these things?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's other words as well that kind of are along the similar line to
Yeah,
the R word, that are used in short form,
yeah,
that we talked about earlier. And I
yeah.
think there's a whole prevalence. But I think that,
Yeah, do you mind me jumping in and sort of just giving a couple of
yeah,
those so people
yeah,
are
absolutely.
aware of words like lunatic, idiot, moron, maniac? These are all words that, it go back again to a nature of eugenics that have very negative connotations in psychosocial or psychiatric diagnosis. Um, and in delusional, I think that's a word that it's been very interesting. I do try to watch creators that have different types of disabilities, different backgrounds, and have had these words used against them. Now, there are reasons that I personally am saying them and, will not say the R word. Some of those reasons have to do with people that I personally also know just from my work and my friends and even family members who are reclaiming the words. Um, I am not. I'm just putting it out there just for a minute. Again, I'm not going to ever be like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, right?
Right.
But I do want to just go back to that reclaim thing really quickly and let people know. And even the word crazy, and that's a whole, we could do a whole other thing. I think that actually would be a very interesting thing to do on one of our TikTok lives, because I think that could be really overused in an inappropriate way.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Australia, there's a cerebral palsy foundation, and now it's called, a CP Center, Cerebral Palsy Center, but it used to be called the Spastic Center. And
Mm,
the same thing with that word, right?
yeah.
It
Yep.
got used very prevalently in Australia
Sure.
and shortened. And that really offended a lot of people, who suffered from, cerebral palsy and Down syndrome, and now autism as a spectrum disorder. So I think,
Sure.
it's challenging. So just understand that it has a bigger meaning than just the word. That's the important message
Yeah.
we want to take.
Exactly. It
Yeah,
has meanings that go back to people being, given forced medication, held down, lobotomies,
yeah,
a lot of things that people sometimes are like, oh, I didn't mean to be harmful. I didn't mean,
yeah.
right. That's the reason it's that let's have this conversation,
And you talked to me in the preparation for this podcast about the institutions, and you touched on it a little bit at the beginning. But it's a real thing now that institution talk is coming back,
Yeah.
and there's a number of states who don't want to sign documents to ratify law where
Mhm.
that could really be a
Yeah.
next step in bringing back institutions. And so we have to speak up about this because
Yeah.
it's totally inappropriate. And again, we mentioned Crip Camp. This is a documentary about the originality of US human rights for people with a disability. It's a documentary on Netflix, which we definitely hope you'll go and watch.
Mhm.
If you haven't, it's very interesting. And it gives you, again, that perspective of what happened. It's like, the Martin Luther King story into what happened in Alabama on the bus. It's all of those things
Yeah.
related to disability. So if you haven't seen Crip Camp, definitely go and watch it on Netflix. It's definitely a good watch.
Please, please watch it. And please also watch it with a lens of the words that are being used because of the time frame, right? I mean, some of these people, this was the beginning of some of the biggest leaders in not just the US disability movement, but globally,
Yeah.
and the words. And those same people that would be the first later in their lives or who are still alive that would say, no, that's not okay anymore. I think another thing I want to mention that's really powerful about Crip Camp, that is really worth people seeing is just that cross disability connection, right? That I'm always saying, we cannot just be in one group, that we have to stand together, that we have to understand the different stigma and stereotypes, that we have to work together. There is intersectionality, all types of things. And I think Crip Cramp is a really just amazing example.
Yeah,
Um,
everybody working together, right? All disability
yeah,
forms. And, obviously I'm involved with tennis. I'm the president of US Blind Tennis, and I'm part of a committee that has 7 other disabilities for adaptive tennis. And it's so important to collaborate, because we learn an amazing amount from each other in what we've all had to deal with.
yeah,
And that's really important to talk about. And I love the opportunity to be able to collaborate with different communities. Being the CEO of Disability Sport Australia, it was a physical disability. We had 11 different sub disability groups involved, and it was so educational for me to be able to go and speak to wheelchair rugby or wheelchair Australian rules football
yeah. Oh,
owners,
wow.
people who had been like hurt in
That's,
wars, who were ex-veterans, come
yeah,
PTSD or in a wheelchair,
yeah,
lost their
right.
legs. It gives you that different
Yeah,
perspective about, okay, I don't know the best ways to go
sure.
about helping people with PTSD, but as an example, I learn, right? And I need to talk to those
Sure.
people to understand.
And I just want to make it clear, I was laughing, obviously not about the topic you were mentioning, except for the fact that I do think we probably have to do a whole episode where you're explaining to me what Aussie rules like football is. I had no idea. It just seems like everyone's running around beating each other up.
And that's pretty
Um,
much what
and that's definitely where the whole Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi at the I was like, what is going on here?
well,
Um,
I
do,
don't think
do do
really,
do
I don't
people there? Is there actually rules? There's another sport in Ireland too that I'm like, are there rules
curling,
or
curling.
is it curl? Is
Yeah, it's curling. I love curling. Kilkenny is my team in curling.
okay, okay.
I grew up watching curling. But there was an adaptive form of curling versus Australian rules, Aussie rules, and they play an international game,
Wow.
which is a mixture of the two. I'll have to educate you on that. But also,
Yeah, you do. And everyone who's watching, because it's one thing to even learn rugby, right? The
right.
rules for many of us. And then these two sports where it's like I have no I love sports and I'm like I don't know what is going and I love hockey, right? That's a very physical sport. What is going on? It just looks like everyone's just beating each other up and they have a ball. I mean, probably having a great time, but like yeah.
And for episode 2, we're going to add some dimensions to this. So we'll be dressing in tribal clothing and having a lot of fun with that. It's part of the banter that Ali and I love to do. She said I can call her Ali because she is a Kiwi lover, and here she goes with her New Zealand sheep shagging ways.
Did we get it? Is it all on screen, everyone? Yeah,
You've
yeah.
actually completely disappeared from the screen now,
That's the point because
which could yeah,
New
right.
Zealand.
So basically,
Aotearoa.
if you're wearing anything New Zealand, you disappear. That's right. Good point.
Okay.
And also, the second part is if you're a Kiwi sheep shagger, you can't actually say Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi.
I don't even know what it means. I think it sounds fun. It sounds
okay.
fun. All right, but I won't say it. Yeah.
All right. So, any final thoughts, Ali?
And I think that this was it's a good topic. I want to, I guess we have to put it out there. There is one other reason that it's become a popularized word, I think recently, and that is that we did see a world leader, the president of the United States, in a tweet in December, I think it was in November or December, calling a governor of a state using the R word. And I think that did, bring it back. I, don't want to get into too much of his language in general, is lots of questions I would have about that. But that's the type of stuff that I think when people in leadership roles, around the world, when people say words don't matter, they do. They absolutely do.
And we all know that, right? We've all been affected by what someone says, and I
and
think that's really important.
People who say that they haven't been affected,
Yeah.
are either just lying to themselves or maybe I have no idea, but they definitely haven't been diagnosed, out of nowhere, going in thinking that they were getting glasses and coming out with
Right.
that type of stuff. But
No,
yeah, no,
it is right. You do have a responsibility as a leader, and you
yeah,
do have a responsibility as someone who a lot of people follow to be able to
yeah,
use appropriate language. And that's
yeah,
what's expected of a world leader. And, again, this isn't a cancel culture or political podcast, and we don't want to be that. But
yeah.
we do want to shine lights on things that should be brought to attention and people should be held accountable for, and that is unacceptable in any sense.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly as you said. And I feel really strongly that, when it comes to and having worked with governments around the world and different types of governments and very restrictive or closed societies or whatever it may be, that for me as a disability rights activist, one of the things I always, will say is it's like I'm gonna say shut the F up anyway. And I don't think that any politician or anyone is doing this perfectly. That's the reason we're having these conversations.
Right.
That's the reason we have to have these conversations. I think it's interesting when sometimes people think it's obviously again that extreme totally inappropriate. But there's plenty of things across the board, across world leaders, that there's a reason. I'll just keep saying that. What about us? Why is it? I think I was thinking about you in employment earlier. We were talking about how there are certain things like HR trainings and stuff that will literally go through all the things, don't say about this or that or this group or that group, and disability has never even brought up type of thing.
Yeah.
And
Definitely at the low end of the totem pole in a lot of societies and a lot of countries, which is very
yeah.
because people can contribute. I feel like
Mhm.
Australia is a leading country for disability rights, and people are, our Paralympic team, as an example, is as well known as our Olympic team, and
Which is awesome. That
and
is
get very
amazing.
similar coverage and support, and like that makes me proud of what we've
Yeah.
done. And LA Paralympic Games are in 2028 as an example, and the swimming venue is a big sticking point
Yeah.
because in a lot of the other Paralympics, especially in Sydney and in London, they were held in the same pool in the same venue, but LA is not doing that. LA,
Yeah.
doing SoFi Stadium and building a pool for the Summer Games, and then Paralympics don't get to
Yeah.
use that pool. And so, again, as we saw in Atlanta, as an example, that wasn't the case as well. And half the things were pulled down, and it was a horrible games experience for elite
Yeah.
athletes who train all the time and
Yep.
and should be recognized. So I feel like these are things that we'll talk about and break down, but really, we just want this to be a conversation about the R word in this instance, and we want your feedback. We want you to come on, and we're going to be starting the Shut the F Up TikTok channel. We're going to be doing lives to talk about some of this stuff and get your reaction. And so I want you to be thinking about, when you see this first edition of the podcast, what fires you up? What things do you want to talk about? What do you want to bring to the table? We're going to have guests. We're going to have panels. We're going to have really exciting conversations and a lot more sheep shagging and Aussie, oi, oi, oi conversation.
Yeah, a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. No. So, and I think just kind of on a final note is just going back to the art in pop culture and all of that is just where people do reclaim with disabilities and get it. Like when there's an Eminem song on the Death of Some Shady album. It's one of his short skits there. Literally, I'm blind, so I have no problem saying, we're like blind people suck, and then he goes off on a couple other groups and he's going back between Slim Shady and Eminem. And I think I saw some of the best, funniest videos from people with all types of disabilities going in, like liking that, getting it, that it was like somebody, he was going back and forth and finally, like it is again, reflection of society that gave an opportunity that he was literally, so again, I'm a big Eminem fan, so I have to put that push out there, but
Well, it doesn't show saying we've got We're Not Afraid.
yeah,
An
I'm
Eminem.
not afraid to take a stand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you'll be hearing that song in our promotion videos as well. So good luck
yeah,
with that.
exactly.
This
So
podcast can be seen on YouTube, and then it will be released on iTunes and Spotify. And you can also go to the website Amerability.com to be able to choose what that is as well. So lots of ways that you can hear and see the podcast. Allison, episode 1, any final thoughts?
no, I had a good time. I feel like I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Me
I,
too.
I could go on about this stuff all day. I'm just hoping people listen and then looking forward to people's thoughts, especially I'd love to hear people in the comments, their thoughts on some of the TV shows now that are using it, because I do see a real big back and forth controversial. Um, yeah, and I'm open to it. But for me, I think the way I would end this episode though is like, I'm not afraid to take a stand, and the R slur can shut the fuck up. Goodbye. Don't use it, people. And Stitch agrees.
Ciao, everybody. Remember, have a conversation. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait, hang on. We're not going to say goodbye
Yeah.
because we've got to plug our platforms, Allison.
Oh, I'm like,
I
peace
know you're
out.
like
Yeah.
out. I'm out. No, Allison, tell everybody about the
Yeah.
Disability Power Arena.
Yeah. Thank you. Really quickly. So I am somebody just who got doged last year, and as did many people working on any type of disability programs, which is something we will be talking about more as well. We're seeing cuts to disability funding around the world. And one of the things I've come back with is creating a lot of different, first I got on TikTok just to see what I was willing to even be talking about with content. And to be quite frank, I actually was sort of thinking about maybe I'll do podcasting and I'll do this and I'll write blogs, but I had to see what was I my own story going to share, which is pretty much anything if it's my story, and started working on different things and learning materials based on just the amount of questions and comments. And I recently, it was about a little over a month ago, I have launched it's a disability rights learning and advocacy community called the Disability Power Arena. And right now, there's a 1-year annual membership fee is $49.99 that will go up, but there are resources. There's disability law modules, so breaking disability law that people have asked me so many questions about over time. I understand it right into ways that make sense. Continuing to add to those resources. We have once a week different master classes and coaches corners and discussions. And we also have an advocacy community, like a discussion area. So one of the things that's happening right now that I need to get back to a couple of our members, right, is helping them put together scripts, because they are in the states that are still involved in the challenge on Section 504. But it's a really it's a space that I'm excited. It's just starting, and this is just the beginning. But I hope, again, it's using 20 years of my experience as a lawyer, and some of the questions people ask me, I can tell you that if you join the arena, you're gonna knowing your rights is power, and it's definitely gonna end up benefiting you a lot, in my opinion.
And
Knowledge is power, knowledge is our armor. And Murray, if you could plug,
who's your number one sign
yeah,
up?
the number one sign up was Murray
Number one,
from,
I was first because I
yeah.
believe in what Allison's doing. I think it's important to know your rights. There's so much challenges for people with disabilities right now. You've got to know your rights. You got to know how you can fight when unfair conditions occur, and it's really important to understand the history of your rights as well, to be able to have that advocacy about you. And it's all about advocacy with Disability Power Arena. So go have a look at it. Go
Yeah.
join. Go ask Allison a lot of questions about why she's a sheep shagger.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. And really quickly, if we could do a plug both for the podcast and the arena. And first off, happy Pride Month to everyone in the LGBTQI community. I want to point that out. And especially to our friends with disabilities, acknowledging that intersectionality is very real and exists. And just a reminder to everyone that we go into July with Disability Pride Month.
And it's
And
also, I found out today, Allison, National Adaptive Book Month. So
wow.
audiobooks
Okay.
phase, and we have to do an episode about technology and the
Yes.
technology that you are using in the mainstream that was actually designed for people with disabilities. That would be a fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we have a lot of stuff. I think that launching this now, and going into July, we'll have a lot of fun, good stuff, a lot of awareness raising, a lot of good conversations.
Excellent. All right. Well, this will be up on June 6th, and we hope that you guys will go check it out on the following platforms: YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify, as well as Amerability.com on the podcast page. And we're excited to get your feedback. Really, go on TikTok, follow Allison and myself, follow Shut the F Up as the podcast,
Hmm.
and engage with us and talk to us about what your thoughts and feelings were. And we're interested in what you have to say,
Yeah,
especially if you're a
absolutely.
Kiwi. Come on, Kiwis, come for me.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it. Just be careful on TikTok comments to avoid using some of the words that you're going to get violations, because I want people to be able to have the write us in the comments
Yeah,
however you feel. Just be careful, because sometimes TikTok gets sensitive in a way that we wouldn't be. So
right. Yeah. All right. Well, for all of us at Shut the F Up, we hope you, if you're a person with a disability, why should we have to shut the F up? It's for everybody else to shut the F up.
well,
Ciao.
you're not the one getting like 50 DMs a day asking me questions that I'm like, yo, just join the arena.
We're
Or,
gonna
or
we're gonna go now before she keeps starting. Okay. She needs to take her New Zealand jersey,
so sometimes, yeah,
do something
exactly.
like that.
All right, everyone, have a good rest of your week, and